There you see President Obama in Denver this week. White House even has a hashtag for these outings. They call it "The Bear is Loose." With the president taking some heat for shooting pool, but not going to the border to see that crisis firsthand. One of the topics for our roundtable, joined by David Plouffe, President Obama's former campaign manager, senior advisor in the White House, Republican strategist Ana Navarro, our own Cokie Roberts, and the editor of the Weekly Standard, Bill Kristol. And David, let me begin with you. I think the Washington Post had a headline which showed some of the critics. They say the bear goes out for a beer and critics growl. So why didn't the president go to the border?
George, I worked in the White House, as did you. He doesn't need to go to the border to address this crisis. First of all, we've had a crisis immigration in this country for decades. Let's not forget this.
But why not go?
Yeah. Well, the point is, he's had plenty of officials down there. It's beside the point. Okay, what we need to do is focus on we need to fix the immigration system most broadly. That's the biggest message out of all this. It's been languishing for decades. You have Republican support, you have Democratic support, get it done. And then specifically on the issue of these kids, obviously, we need more resources. You just talked to Chairman Goodlatte. He indicated he might be willing to support some funding, but we need more judges down there. We need more facilities down there. We've got to deal with this short-term crisis, but it's got to be part of a long-term immigration solution, which, by the way, almost everybody in the country supports, except enough House Republicans.
Look, if the president had gone to the border, it doesn't make a big difference, but it's symbolically important, and it's important for him to show America what's happening with those kids. This is not the time for us to be tough guys. These are children, and they are being put by themselves onto trains and boats and all of that to come here. Think what a mother must feel to put that child in that dangerous situation to come here. We need to be taking care of these children.
And it's clearly a dangerous situation, but I think that's part of the problem for the president. If you go down to the border, part of his message has to be, you guys have got to go back home. Well, and it's not going to be all compassion.
But he can't say that. First of all, that's not what the law says. But secondly, they go home to Honduras. I heard a report this week that in New York, your chances of getting murdered are 1 in 25,000. In Honduras, it's 1 in 14. You can't send children home to that.
I'm afraid you have to.
You don't.
You absolutely. We send children back to Mexico. We send children back all over the world.
But they're not in those situations.
Well, they are in those situations, and things in Central America have been tough for a long time. But the idea that you're going to let unaccompanied minors just come into the U.S. because of a loophole in the 2008 law that allows you to send the Mexican kid back and the Honduran kid gets to stay. And that's not sensible. And so that the Republicans are going to propose this week on the Hill amending the 2008 law to have even treatment for everyone. And the president does have to send a message, you can't come here. And why is this happening? David talks about this has been a problem for decades. Why are these kids suddenly flooding this place? Because the president amnestied all the kids who were already here in 2012, and people in Central America decided...
Can
I just say one thing? He just finished the sentence. He amnestied all the kids who were here, and every sensible person in Central America thought, hey, great, if I can get my kid into the U.S., there'll be an amnesty for him.
Let me tell you something. Unfortunately, there is not one cause for what is causing this. It's a perfect storm of push factors in Central America that include the violence, that include the poverty, and pull factors here that are being exploited and taken advantage of by an organized criminal ring of human smugglers that are misrepresenting U.S. policy, taking advantage of parents, getting them to cobble together $6,000, $7,000 to put their kids in these trains and in this transport system to get them here, when in fact there is no such pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for these kids. So it is important for the president to clarify that the misrepresentation that's going on purpose by criminal forces in Central America is not so. That's why it would have been important for him to go to the border. I have spoken to Republican and Democrat congresspeople and people in the White House who have been to the shelters, who have been to the border. And listening to the kids, listening to the people running those shelters gives you a very unique perspective of what the actual problems on the ground are. I wish he had done it.
But this Republican argument that this situation is caused because we're not sending dream kids home, it's preposterous. It's not based in reality. And so if that's the message, which fine, if that's a Republican message, we want to start sending all the...
Did you just hear me make that argument? Okay, well, I'm as Republican as Bill Kristol.
You're not quite as Republican as Bill Kristol.
I'm not quite as old a Republican as you are, but I'm just as much a Republican.
You made great points.
The Republican message...
We've stopped deporting dream kids.
Amnesty is a magnet. That has been the Republican message. People from the White House have been scoffing at that. How childish a view is that? Well, what is happening on the border right now? The other Democratic message for the last 2 or 3 years, the border is secure. That's not true either.
Well, you know, it's interesting.
Unprecedented border resources, more in terms of people, in terms of personnel, in terms of money.
And as Jerry Brown said in California, they all come to California, which, by the way, is welcoming them in many
I'm sorry,
times.
there's a fence in California, and they don't come into California.
And they're coming from Texas to California.
Right, well, that's wonderful. They're being shipped to California.
Jerry Brown says, because our border is secure.
Why is the California border secure? Because we built a fence there over the resistance of the Obama
The bottom line is the border is more secure than it has been. It's a completely secure no, but these kids are turning themselves in because when they think that when they turn them, they're not being apprehended by border guards. They are turning themselves in so that they can then go into the process.
And hats off to the people in McAllen, Texas.
And let me say one more thing.
Sacred Heart Church and the Catholic Charities and Save the Children are in there trying to help these kids. And that's what the Congress should be focusing on.
And there's one thing I want to say, you know, in light of what Koki just said, I'm very disappointed with those Hispanic celebrities that love to go to the White House to party and sing and dance for the president, with those Hispanic organizations and with people that are Hispanics and have a voice in this country that have not stood up and have not figured out a way to help those kids, at least while they're in those shelters, give them better conditions.